everybody, and welcome to the Human Echoes podcast.
I'm Tony Southcott.
I'm Albert Berg, and I live, I die, and I live again, baby!
You spray paint your face. Hey, we got this. We got the right haircut. We're halfway there. Just need to paint ourselves white.
I legitimately considered painting myself white for this, and then I realized I didn't have any white paint. And I had, like, a dorky polo shirt on, so it didn't really work.
Maybe for the thumbnail.
We're coming to you with a 0.5 episode, a little shortened bit, but we have to talk about Mad Max. And so we're giving you just a condensed preview. We're not going to do our regular podcast ramblings. This is all about the movie, all the time.
Quick 20, 25, 30 minutes on one of the best action movies I've seen in a long, long time.
I mean, like, my initial reaction, you say the best in a long time, like, my initial reaction is to put it, like, on the Mount Rushmore of action movies, Tony. Like, you've got Terminator 2, you've got Die Hard, and then there's this movie. Like, I'm trying to think of another action movie that I liked as well as I like this movie, that worked as well, that fired on all of the cylinders that an action movie can fire on, and then fire on some cylinders that, like, action movies normally don't fire on as well. Just wow.
Yeah, definitely. I remember thinking, like, oh, this is awesome. I was having a good time. And then after the first major chase scene ends, like 40
minutes into the movie, by the way.
Pretty much 40 minutes into the movie.
Because that goes forever.
And, like, my heart was just pounding. Like, I didn't realize how much it affected me until the music finally stopped and let me have a breath. And all of a sudden, like, my hands are all sweaty and I'm, like, leaning on the edge of my seat. My heart's pounding. Like, it's an experience that a lot of movies haven't been able to capture. I don't know, like, everything came together so well for this, so perfectly. Like, you have the action that's mostly practical. You have this amazing score that, like, it's what I'm going to be writing action scenes to for the next few years, I think.
There was, I mean, you talk about the action, like, we just saw Avengers a couple weeks ago, Tony, and I mean, that's superhero stuff, right? You've got the Hulk, you've got Iron Man, and yet this is the movie that I'm watching, and I'm just sitting there, I cannot believe this is happening. I can't believe this is happening. I can't believe this is happening! This is on the screen in front of me! Oh my god! Ah!
It's because this is, like, the most metal movie you've ever seen.
It's literally, like, that's... you know that dude from the trailer? If you've seen the trailer for Mad Max, you know there's the, like, electric guitar player on top of the, like, the giant amp riding through the desert, and you're like, well, that's a cool shot for the trailer, but no! He's in the whole movie! He's all the way... I mean, he's not a main character or anything, but, like, it made sense, even! That ridiculous, over-the-top metal stuff made sense in the movie, Tony!
Well, you're just trying to get these guys, like, so hyped up they're willing to do anything, even kill themselves if they have to.
Exactly,
so, like,
exactly. They're running on pure adrenaline. They're just like, they've got to stay crazy, or they're gonna start thinking about what they're doing and how they're gonna die. They've got their guy, their war drums, boom, 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 and the guy, and every time they go into battle, he's their drummer. He's their, like, I mean, the music in this movie, they do have, like, actual orchestral score, but a lot of times it'll sync up with, like, hey, this is the music that guy's actually playing to get those guys as hyped up as you are watching this movie to be in the fight that they're about to be in and you're about to watch.
With his flamethrower guitar on the top of a giant war wagon with 8 people playing drums behind him. Ah, that guy was awesome.
Everything was awesome in this movie. Except, ironically, maybe not quite as much Mad Max.
Yeah, that was the main complaint Elise had, is like, this movie wasn't about Mad Max.
It was not. You could remove Max entirely from this plot, and it would make no difference. Like, he has that one thing where he's like, maybe we should go do this. And they're like, alright, let's go do that. But just put that line in somebody else's mouth, and the movie proceeds perfectly without him.
Yeah. Like, so they could have just had someone else come up with that conclusion. It would have been fine. But man,
yeah.
Like, it was so... I don't know. It's like, it's everything you want in a movie. It's like hot women. It's good, like, really cool cars. It's post-apoc. It's full action. It's well acted. It's everything.
There are some people who are, like, not fans of feminism who were upset by this movie, Tony.
The MRA people.
Yeah, and even that, I'm like, listen, alright? I have a problem with movies that shoehorn and shows and stuff that shoehorn the feminist angle in a way that doesn't feel right, where they're not really creating a strong female character. They're creating a straw feminist character, you know. But it's weird. I felt that way about. I didn't finish Agent Carter, but there were several episodes of Agent Carter. I'm just like, yeah, we get it. You've hit all your points about like how the men are, you know, mean to you, and you don't get as okay. Yeah, can we get on with like an actual good story here instead of preaching? And this movie didn't sit down and preach to you. You know, you felt like you got what you went for, and yet there was that underlying political like extra stuff if you wanted to dig into that as well. It did have strong female characters that were actually characters that actually had individuality and differences and like
and they did pretty well for not really being actresses. Like some of these girls were just Victoria's Secret models.
Well, I mean, to be fair, that was actually sort of their function in the world as well. I mean, they were, you know, the harem of Immortan Joe, who, you know, I mean, he's the leader, so he's gonna pick the hottest girls he can find, but they played pretty well as their characters, and again, they all felt, even though they're there practically for I mean, in another movie, those are just eye candy, right? Like, they're kind of scantily clad, you know, they're his sexual playthings until they, you know, that's the main plot, is that they escape and he's chasing after them. And yet, all of them feel like they have their own thing. They have their own personality. One of them's like, I don't know about this. Maybe we should just go back. It seemed like it was easier back there. And the other one, you know, they fight amongst themselves and they have different values. And one of them
one of them's like oddly poetic.
Yeah. And even the villains, Tony, even the villains are well characterized. I mean, you talk about this being, you know, a movie where the women get good characterization. But you look at, like, the War Boys and the people who are in those parties, and those guys, in spite of all of their, like, over-the-top craziness and their war paint and the, you know, Immortan Joe, like, they all feel like real people. They react in ways that their characters should react in this, like, wasteland of a desert, even though they're, you know, they're made out, like, super villainous. But your first shot of Immortan Joe is him without his armor on, without his face mask he's going to spend in the rest of the movie. Like, you see the sores that are covering his body.
Yeah,
you
just
see
tumors everywhere.
Right, and it's like this introduction of this guy as this frail, dying thing who everyone thinks is immortal. And there's a whole, like, metaphorical undertone there of, you know, the patriarchy and the sort of, you know, idea of false religion and putting up a god that isn't really a god. You know, he's their god, and
he's their god because he forces them, or he's the one in control of the water, basically.
Well, right, but they think he's, like, they literally believe he's immortal. They have an entire religion built around him and cars. I mean, there's so much world building in this that isn't in your face. Like, you can tell that somebody put a bunch of thought into how this world worked. It's not, people are going to argue about, like, it doesn't make quote-unquote scientific sense, you know, like, well, they don't
yeah,
have
like,
a
someone
gas.
sent us a tweet earlier and they were just trolling. Like, this guy actually sends us a fair amount of tweets where he's just trolling because he knows his things that could get under Al's skin. He's like, remember before you see this movie that the plot couldn't happen because gasoline goes bad.
Right, and well, for
one thing, they're using gasoline.
I feel like, do what?
They're using gasoline anyway.
I also feel like that there is actually, like, a refinery in the plot of the movie, because they have Gastown that they're going to. Like, my idea of that is that it's, you know, a few, you know, leftover working oil wells and refineries that are just pumping out, you know, oil. It may not be that, but that was how I saw it. And
well, it definitely looked like there were derricks and tanks and everything over in Gastown, so that makes sense.
Yeah, and so you had, I mean, all of that mythology just worked, and it's just baked into the world, right? Like, nobody sits down and explains, like, well, we worship the car and its engine. We say V8 and hold our hands up like this in the form of a V8. Like, no, they just, like, they have a quick shot. The way they revere
the steering wheel and everything.
Oh, the steering wheel scene was so good, and you had that, like, the sort of Viking berserker rage that is, like, had the spiritual overtones and stuff.
You spray your face, like, with chrome, and you basically go berserker and often kill yourself. That was one of the coolest, like, that was whenever I knew this was going to be a great movie. Like, In the first chase sequence, the guy gets hit with like an arrow right in the mouth. Like, so he knows he's probably screwed.
Yeah, it's coming out the back of his head. I mean, he's not okay. Not in this world. He's already dead anyway because he's dying of tumors and stuff, like half these guys are.
Yeah, so he just spray paints it like over his mouth and like screams that he needs a witness, and then like dives off the back of this giant truck into another vehicle to blow it up. It's just it looks so good. I imagine some stuntmen got hurt in this movie.
I'm surprised nobody died in this movie, Tony. Like my mind was just blown away at how that I was seeing what I was seeing. I understand that maybe some of it was digital, but this is a movie that understands where to put its effects and the value of physical effects. I can't believe this movie got made, Tony. In the world of CG superheroes, we saw actual cars rolling through the actual desert that actually look like that with actual guys. Just,
like, George Miller is a 70-year-old man. He's the one who did the original Mad Max like trilogy, and like if this is the last thing he ever creates, which I hope it isn't, because he's fantastic. Like, it was totally worth waiting 30 years for the sequel for this.
Well, this was in development for like 15 years too. I mean, he originally came with, they were going to start shooting this in like 2001. It got halted by the World Trade Center attack. That's how far back he's been thinking about this movie. And you can tell that, like, he just spent all of that time that he had that he wasn't making it like, well, we'll do this and we'll do this, and like piling on all the little details and all the mythology and stuff that just adds up. This is, way back in the day I saw... Do what?
It's kind of like with Avatar for James Cameron, where it just like took years and years and years.
Yeah, except for a lot of this stuff was actually on the screen, Tony. Sorry, I'm fine with Avatar. I don't want to...
I was more talking about like the development cycle and how much time and thought he put into it. Just George Miller decided he was going to turn the desert into a playground for all these awesome cars.
I mean, there's so many little things. Like when they drive through that marsh, and you see the marsh people on screen for like 10 seconds, and they're just these people who are on stilts, like scavenging through this, this muddy wasteland. Looking like some kind of a creature from a science fiction film, like the what is the thing? The mosquito face from Frankenstein's Army. I mean, they basically had that look to them, except for not the drill in the head.
That's one of the coolest like trends in costuming that's happened for a while. Like I saw a couple of those things at Comic-Con where people like they're walking on stilts on all fours and just moving all crazy. I really like that design, and it looked so good in this movie. Like, it made sense because of the way the mud worked and everything, too, that's how people would have to get around there.
Yeah, and the night shots where you could... I mean, I don't know exactly how they did it. I assume they weren't able to light all that up, so it was... Maybe that was day for night with, a lot of really clever...
It could have been full moon, too. Like, if you've ever been out on the plains, like, during a full moon, you can... Like, it's crazy how bright it is.
Yeah, but they would have to do that every night, Tony. I mean, you can't shoot all that stuff on one night.
Yeah, well, you'd have 2 nights, but that would be really rough, because there's like 3 or 4 nights in this movie.
But it's just, everything is visible. In this movie, there's not, like, shaky cam, like, I wish I could see what was going on. This seems like it might be kind of awesome. You get a real geographical sense at all times of where everybody is, and where the action's going, and what's important happening right now. That chase... Like the sort of endless chase where there are people in the background, like, and you have these giant sweeping shots of, here's our heroes coming this way, and then like in the background you have 3 war parties converging on them, and you just see the plumes of dust being kicked up by the cars and everything in the background. And I mean, the visual storytelling in this was impeccable.
I can't imagine how awesome that would have been being like the guy in the helicopter filming that, if it wasn't a drone anyway. Like, just imagine, like, how surreal it would be to be just seeing that war party rolling into the distance underneath you.
It's incredible. I mean, it's incredible. There's so many great stunts. There's so many just car things that you can't believe. You cannot believe what you're seeing on the screen. It's so visceral. I mean, there were moments in this movie where I wanted to just stand up and cheer. Like, in the theater, I didn't because I'm self-conscious, but I just wanted to be like, yes! And, like, I felt bad sitting down for some of this stuff because it was so. And I saw this movie when I was dead tired too, Tony. Like, I texted you, I had about 4 hours of sleep the night before, and I had to go into work afterwards, and there was a part of me that's just like, I kind of wish I could take my nap now.
This movie was exhausting in a lot of ways too, because of just how much it affected me. Like, I felt twice as tired as I should have coming out of this last night.
It's one that I want to see again. Like, in the theaters, I want to see it again. And odds are I may not get to, right? Because, I mean, you got Tomorrowland coming up, you got San Andreas, you got Jurassic World, there's like 18 movies coming out that I want to see, right? You know, and I'm worried that it's going to go out of theaters before I can, but...
This one will be in theaters for a while. My sister wants me to go today because she didn't get to go last night. So I might end up seeing it later today.
It's one you have to see, and you need to see it in the theater. The sound... We haven't even talked about the sound design, Tony. Like, other than the music... The sound design of this is incredible.
Yeah, just like the reverence for like the engine sounds, for just well, we talked about the music already, but everything is perfect.
Well, and there's scenes where somebody shoots a gun, right, and it's right next to another character's head, and in that scene, the gunshot is just boom, boom, like the loudest like explosion that you can imagine in a movie theater, because that's how visceral it is for the characters. And
you hear the ears ringing afterwards. Like,
yeah,
this is how you get tinnitus.
And then you get like there's that one scene where like they're like there's gunshots in the background, and it's actually behind the characters, and that's the first time ever, despite the fact that like all movies now basically are Dolby Surround. Like, I looked behind me, I'm like, who is shooting behind me? And then I was like, oh, that's actually in the movie, that's behind them.
Yeah, like the effective use of like THX and Dolby sound. Like, it's just... I wish I could have seen this at the premiere at, like, Cannes, or... Was it at Cannes? Yeah, it was at Cannes Film Festival first. And that's where you started seeing, like, all these these directors and stuff tweeting about how they just could not handle it. It was just too good. And, like, that's where the hype train kind of started. That's the type of place where people will stand up and shout and clap and everything. Like, at film festivals, if something awesome happens, like, people are uninhibited about that sort of thing.
Well, the film festival, too, is probably a lot of filmmakers, right? So you got people who know what goes into this, watching and being like, I can't believe you just did that. Oh my gosh.
So, like, if you would have been there, like, to watch that, I'm sure people were clapping and everything. They were clapping at the Stanley Film Festival, like, back and forth, like, just anytime something awesome happened, like, it wasn't unusual to get an ovation for it. Like, I wish I could have been in a theater where that was happening, because there was dead silence. Like, people stopped eating popcorn and stuff at certain parts of this movie because it was just so intense. How do you keep up a frenetic pace like that? Like, if I could have one word other than great to describe this movie, it would probably be frenetic. It's just like, it's just chaos.
Well, I would not describe it as chaos, Tony. I think that, chaos is probably the last thing I would say to describe it. It's very focused. It knows exactly where it's... This isn't like an action scene in Transformers where you're like, I don't know what's happening and I don't really care. This is all, like, again, very carefully thought out and choreographed. It's supposed to look like chaos for the characters, but you know what's going on at all times. And I a little bit disagree with the... not disagree with the fact that, there's that really long chase scene at the beginning, right? And that there's like, this just keeps going. Is this going to be the whole movie? But then it does stop, and you do get those ebbs and flows of, it's not all action. You do have times when it settles down and it changes pace a little bit, and it really lets you catch your breath and like, all right, we're going to give you like 15 minutes to reset from that. There's going to be stuff happening, but you don't have to like be on the edge of your seat for this part. And then we're going to go up to something else, and, and then you have your big final thing, which ramps it way back up.
Yeah, and you get, like, a bunch of new characters, like, right before that happens that make things more intense with, like, the women that they find and everything. It's just...
I really enjoyed Mad Max's, like, introduction to the main party, right? Like, despite the fact that he's sort of just dragged along for most of this film. He starts out, basically strapped to the hood of a car because the driver like doesn't want to, like, he's the blood bag for them. They're giving them blood.
Essentially, at the very beginning of the movie, they lock him in a cage to be a blood donor for all these people. Because whenever you're doing this sort of stuff, you're gonna lose hands. You're gonna need blood donors.
Well, also they're dying of cancer and stuff.
Yeah, that's true.
And probably lymphoma, not what's it? Leukemia.
Yeah, leukemia. But like he doesn't want to miss out on this battle, so he literally grabs Mad Max, straps him to the front of the car, puts that muzzle on him, and just like starts driving and starts going crazy. And he thinks that he's been chosen because Immortan Joe looked at him. So he's like turning on the NOS and getting out there first and trying to go after those girls.
But what I was gonna lead up to say initially was that once he finally does get up with the main party, like he's not a hero. You know, he shows up and he's just like, I want your truck. You know, like he's pointing a gun at these people who are, you know, obviously mostly helpless women. Like they're in the process of cutting off their chastity belts, and he doesn't care. He's just like, come and cut my chain. Give me your truck. I'm leaving. And then he, like, the only reason he does not leave them there for Immortan Joe to come and take him back is because the truck has a special setup where, like, he can't, you know, take it. He's just another member of the Wasteland. He's just trying to survive, and that's all. And it's only until after he gets to know them and sees that they start to trust him and he trusts them a little bit, only then does he really, you know, start to fight with them instead of with them. If that makes sense.
One of the, possibly one of the best performances in this movie was Nicholas Hoult, who was the guy that played Nux, the bad guy that initially starts out as a bad guy and kind of joins up. I don't want to go.
Well, and his arc was so fascinating too. You're talking about how he sees Immortan Joe and he's like, I've been chosen or whatever, and he fails so often that he just collapses, right? Like he's on the truck after trying and failing several times to stop them, he's there again. He could be, you think like, oh, is he lurking around trying to kill somebody? And then they find him and he's just like, I lost my chance to get into Valhalla. Like, it's as if you found a terrorist and he was bummed out because he couldn't, like, blow up himself and get to the 72 virgins. And yet they don't treat him, I mean, they treat him with a little bit of like, all right, you're the bad guy, kind of, but, you know, the one girl sort of takes him in and says, hey, it's okay, you know, and that, to me, again, like, humanizing these inhuman characters, like, any other film would take these guys and they're painted white and they're scary and they're berserker rage, and you're like, oh, that's just gotta be just a cardboard cutout villain, right? Nope. And there's the scene, I don't want to spoil anything, but Immortan Joe, like, loses someone that's important to him, and there's that scene, and then he tells his sons, and they're, like, super bummed out, and they're, you know, like it felt like a real reaction. It didn't feel like, I am evil and villain. Like, he, in his weird, awful, villainous way, kind of cared about that person or that thing.
Yeah. And I wish I know that Immortan Joe is in the original series. Like, I just can't remember.
Well, the actor is.
Yeah.
The actor played a guy named Toe Cutter in the original series. Which I had not, again, I only saw Beyond Thunderdome, and I saw it once, and I saw it a long time ago. So
I saw all three of them before I was 12, so it's been a little while. I think it might be something to revisit, though.
But I think that this, I can't imagine that the other ones are better than this. Yeah. Although they probably, again, have more Mad Max in them.
It's still George Miller, but just a much less veteran version, and they still use pretty much all awesome practical effects. I've always heard that Beyond Thunderdome was the most over the top one. I can't remember much about it other than Tina Turner was in it. So I don't know.
This is just such a great, and we talk about this all the time. We talked about this practical effects, but there's really good use of CG in this too. Yeah,
like the storms, the dust storm things happening, and whenever it does have to use CGI, it's not distracting.
Well, and there's that fortress that Immortan Joe lives in. Like, you're pretty sure that they didn't build all of that. But there's no indication that, like, okay, well, this part I'm looking at isn't real, and that part is. You can't, there's, the dividing line is so seamless. This is how you use special effects. If you have the money.
I can't even imagine how many filmmakers watched this and just felt bad about themselves and also felt inspired, because it's like, you get the feeling that Fox, was it Fox that released this?
I think it's Warner Brothers, by way of Legendary.
Yeah, it's Warner Brothers. Whoever, like, paid to have this movie made and just let him do his thing out in the desert, That's like one of the best decisions I've seen from Hollywood in a while.
Well, not only did they, I mean, you say they let him do his thing. From what I read in the production notes on Wikipedia, they were talking about, like, they sent a guy out to make sure, all right, George, stay on target, keep to the schedule, like, we're going over budget here, and they had to do reshoots. I remember 2 or 3 years ago hearing news about this movie getting out of control, and like, oh man, everything's going off the rails and stuff, and you think, like, well, I guess this is gonna suck, and they probably sunk a bunch of money into it.
It's a sequel that nobody knew they wanted. Like, they're like, another Mad Max, it's just more Hollywood reboots, etc., etc., and then you see the trailer and there's just something different about it.
It's proof that art is art, and you make your art, if the studio is trying to interfere, you still do your best to make your art. And if it's a reboot, you still do your best to make your art. You do it for the love of it. You do it because you have an idea and a story to tell and something new to say, and that's what this is. I think that's all we really have to say about it.
From the director of Babe, Pig in the City.
Yeah, well, obviously, yes. I mean, he's not going to top that, Tony. Babe, Pig in the City, modern masterpiece. But this is way up there.
Yeah, this is definitely an action masterpiece. You guys need to see it in theaters. Like, I don't care if you're a shut-in. This is specifically aimed at Joseph Devon, who doesn't go to movies very often because whatever. Go see this movie in theaters. Like, it's an experience you'll want. Like, I might be watching it at the drive-in tonight just because it'd be kind of cool to watch this movie in a car. We'll see. But...
yeah. You're gonna, like, glue some spikes to it?
Yeah. Full Road Warrior garb. I imagine there's going to be a lot of people, like, this is going to be like a new cosplay thing for a while, too, for Charlize Theron. I'm good with that.
That robot, we didn't even talk about the robot arm, but Charlize Theron, robot arm is pretty awesome.
Yeah. Never a distraction. Solid. And she does club Mad Max once with her stub arm, and it looks pretty effective. There is an MMA fighter that only has that same amount of an arm, and he just whacks people with it so hard. But anyway, that's a discussion for the podcast, because this is all about Mad Max. Thank you guys so much for listening. Whenever you get this, next week we'll be doing Ex Machina. This is kind of a little bonus thing. I hope you guys enjoy this movie as much as we did. Check out humanechoes.com. There's a place to donate if you think this was worth a little bit of cash. Check out our awesome posts. Like, we're going to be having a lot more content coming out soon as far as articles. Jen Gautreau did an awesome post earlier this week. More books in a brew. There's so much stuff over at humanechoes.com. Be sure to check it out.
And we'll see you next week. I'm dying to talk about Ex Machina. We're going to record that next, but you guys have to wait. I die! I live! I die again! I got that backwards. Whatever.
You guys have a Chrome weekend. See you later.
Bye.